Have you ever been looking at some modern web development code and just stopped and thought, wait a minute, is that HTML sitting right inside a JavaScript file? Well, if you have, then you've already met JSX. So in this explainer, we're going to break down exactly what this is, why it's become so incredibly popular, and how it really changes the game for building user interfaces.
Okay, let's just start with a question that gets right to the heart of it all. Have you ever been deep inside a JavaScript file, manipulating the DOM, creating elements, and just thought to yourself, I wish I could just write the HTML I want right here? If you've ever felt that, then you have felt the exact pain point that JSX was invented to fix.
To really appreciate a good solution, you first have to understand the problem it's solving. So let's take a quick look back at what building UI components used to be like with plain JavaScript. And trust me, why it was often a massive headache.
Yeah, so before JSX came along, if you wanted to create even a simple element on a page, you had this chain of commands, right? You'd have to do document.createElement, then you'd set its content, then you'd have to find its parent and append it. Now, for one little thing, that's okay, I guess, but imagine building an entire application that way. Your code just becomes this tangled, unreadable mess that's a nightmare to maintain.
This slide really tells the whole story, doesn't it? On the left, you see what's actually happening under the hood. A function call, react.createElement. It works, but it's clunky, it's long, and it doesn't look anything like the final result on the web page. But then look at the right. That's the dream, right? It's clean, it's simple, and it looks exactly like the HTML it's supposed to create. The whole point of JSX is to let us write the code on the right and have it magically turn into the code on the left for us. So how do we actually do that? How do we bridge that gap between the beautiful readable markup we want to write and the JavaScript functions that the browser actually needs to run? Well, that's where JSX steps in. It's the solution that lets us have the best of both worlds.
Okay, so what is it? The name JSX stands for JavaScript XML. But here's the most important thing to get straight. It is not a new language. It's not a templating engine either. It's just a syntax extension. Think of it as a special power-up for JavaScript that lets you write what looks and feels like HTML directly in your JS files. It makes writing UI code just so much more intuitive. This is probably the best way to think about it. People call it syntactic sugar, and what that really means is that it doesn't add any new features to JavaScript itself. The browser has no idea what JSX is. Instead, it's just a sweeter, much nicer way to write those react.createElement calls we saw a second ago. It's all about making the developer's life easier.
But hold on, if the browser only understands plain old JavaScript, HTML, and CSS, how on earth does it read this special HTML-like stuff in our code? It really does feel like magic, but it's actually a super clever process. So let's pull back the curtain and see exactly how it all works.
Here's the key thing to remember. The code that you write is not the code the browser runs. There's a translation step that happens in between. So, you write your nice, clean JSX. Then a tool called a transpiler, and the most common one is called Babel, comes along, reads your JSX, and converts it into regular, plain, vanilla JavaScript that every single browser can understand perfectly.
Let's make this super clear with an example. This right here is what we, the developers, get to write in our code editor. It's just a simple constant that's holding what looks like a perfectly normal HTML H1 tag. It's clean, it's declarative, you know exactly what it is just by looking at it. This is the before.
And here's the after. When our build process runs, that transpiler, Babel, takes our nice code from the last slide and turns it into this, the plain old react.createElement function that the browser knows what to do with. See the beauty of it? We get to write the easy, readable version, and the tools automatically handle the ugly translation part for us. It's a perfect system.
Okay, so we've covered the what and the how, but now we get to the most important question, the why. Why has this idea completely taken over the world of modern web development? Well, the benefits are pretty huge.
So why is JSX so beloved? Well, first off, readability is a big one. You can actually see the structure of your UI in your code instead of trying to picture it in your head from a bunch of function calls. Second is something called co-location. This is a huge shift in thinking. Instead of having separate HTML files and JavaScript files, you keep all the logic and all the markup for one component right there together in one place. It makes your components truly self-contained. Then you get way more helpful errors. If you forget a closing tag, the compiler can catch it and tell you exactly where you messed up before your code even tries to run. And finally, it's just familiar. If you know HTML, you're already halfway there, which makes getting started so much easier. So at the end of the day, JSX is so much more than just a cool syntax. It's a tool that basically removes the friction between the user interface you're imagining in your head and the code you have to write to make it real. It lets you focus on what really matters, building an amazing user experience instead of getting bogged down in clunky APIs. So the only real question left is, now that you know what it is and how it works, what are you going to build with it?